Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today what we are going to be going over is the 2020 presidential election. If, like a recent CNN poll holds true, if Joe Biden would basically win in a landslide by winning over 16 points over Donald Trump. So I just am generally making this prediction. I don't think it's accurate, and you're just gonna, in the map that it kind of makes, you can tell that this is not going to happen. It's gonna, when today's polarized climate, it's just going to be incredibly difficult for a Democrat like Joe Biden to pull over so much support from Republicans and independents, and so many other factors need to work in Joe Biden's favor, which, I mean, they have somewhat worked in his favor thus far, but this is generally a map that I do not think is achievable. So what I did in calculating this map is I used the 538 election forecast, which currently has Joe Biden at a 85% chance of winning, which is insane. This is the highest that it's ever been since the release of this, and you know, at June 1st, 70%, and then it keeps going up and up and up, pretty stagnant, and then it just keeps getting better and better for Biden ever since the beginning of September. For electoral votes, they think he'll get 343. A landslide in my own description. And the popular vote, they think he's going to win it by 8. So they also have it state by state and what they think their popular vote totals are going to be for each individual state. What I did is, since Joe Biden's leading nationally by 8 points in this forecast, and that kind of reflects the states, I added 8 points to each individual states on their margins for Joe Biden, and we're just kind of going to look at what that actually means. So, for the safe Democratic states, there's actually going to be quite a few. California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New York, Connecticut, all the very Democratic states are going to become, safe in this prediction. And there really is no reason for them not to be. However, there are quite a few safe states that you generally wouldn't think of as safe states. Nevada is safe, which is insane. There's a poll that recently came out there where it was only within 4 or 6 points, which is pretty close. However, these polls do tend to overestimate Republicans no matter what in the state of Nevada for some reason. The state of New Mexico and Colorado would also be safe. Another safe state would be the state of Michigan. Michigan went for President Trump back in 2016, and now it's being a safe characterization for Joe Biden. He's projected to win it already by about 10 points in the latest forecast. Actually, over 10. No, not over 10 points. By about 8 or so points in the latest forecast. So with that additional 8 points, Joe Biden would be winning the state of Michigan by 16 points. These are numbers that we haven't really seen since 2008, and that was when there was the auto bailout. That's when the recession just started to kick in, and a lot of these Midwestern states generally wanted to go for Barack Obama, and that's why they really turned out in huge numbers for them. And if Joe Biden were to win nationwide by 16 points, he could easily reciprocate those margins. Another safe state, New Hampshire. New Hampshire was one of the closest states back in 2016, Hillary Clinton's state. However, it is a state that generally is very close no matter what election, and it's going safe for Joe Biden, which is insane. Another safe state, the state of Minnesota. It's still a Hillary Clinton state. President Trump's going to really try to target this state. Has been pretty close in recent polling. However, I think that the state of Minnesota is going to go to Joe Biden at the end of the day. Probably not by a safe margin, but in this prediction, it's safe. Maine at large is also going to be safe, along with Maine's 1st congressional district. Maine at large only went to Hillary Clinton by 3 points back in 2016, so this is really significant on the fact that it really has shifted so favorably towards the Democrats. The state of Virginia would also be safe, a state trending more and more Democratic ever since 2008, and it wouldn't surprise me if Virginia were to be safe on election day. But I generally don't think, as of this moment, it would be the number one scenario. I generally think that's all the safe states that I have characterized. And And now we're going to go on to the safe states for the Republicans, and there really aren't too many. The state of Idaho would be safe, Wyoming, North Dakota, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Nebraska's 3rd congressional district would all be safe. That's it. Just 23 electoral votes are safe for President Trump. In a scenario where, Joe Biden's basically outperforming by 8 points on the projected forecast already, despite the fact that I think that some of these red states, even if Joe Biden does super well nationwide, I don't think that they would swing 8 points in favor automatically. It is pretty notable that a lot of these Republican states are not as safe for, President Trump as a lot of the Democratic states are. So definitely a lot of states that you formerly would not think are competitive would 100% be competitive in this map. Now we're going to go to the likely Democratic states, and there are quite a few as well. So the state of Wisconsin would be likely, very narrowly being likely, might I add, very close to becoming a safe margin, along with the state of Pennsylvania. Again, 2 Trump states that really are in play this election, and Joe Biden winning them basically secures it, and with that, Joe Biden wins the presidency. No surprises there. In addition to that, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district would be a likely district for Joe Biden. Again, a Trump district. Florida would be likely, pretty insane. The last time I went for a likely margin was, I believe, for George Bush back in 2004. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was one of the Bushes. They won it by a little over 5 points. The state of Arizona would also be likely. I can definitely see that happening. That's more realistic than Florida being likely, but North Carolina, pretty interesting. A state that went to Donald Trump by quite a few points, almost likely characterization back in 2016, now is going for a likely characterization for the Democrats, a state that even Barack Obama couldn't carry in 2012, and was super close when Barack Obama was able to narrow up the margins in states like Missouri or Montana. Another likely state would be the state of Ohio. Again, this is a state that's supposed to be one of the closest currently. It's only 0.5 percentage point lead for Joe Biden in the predicted popular vote. That's a tongue twister, but yeah, the state of Georgia would also be likely. A state that hasn't been Democratic, I think, since 1992, when what's his name, Bill Clinton won the state, and I think that Georgia definitely has been in play for Democrats in recent years, especially with the 2018 gubernatorial race, where Stacey Abrams could have easily won, depending on what your stance is on that race. In addition to that, Maine's 2nd congressional district would be likely for the Democrats or for Joe Biden, a state that swung hugely for President Trump by over 20 points in his favor back in 2016. Now going, again, another huge swing, about 20 points into Joe Biden's favor, which is pretty insane. In addition to that, the state of Iowa would be likely. Currently is projected to go to President Trump. However, it's not projected to go by much, and with an 8-point swing, it pushes it right over that 5-point margin, and the Democrats would definitely be in play. I think Iowa definitely is a state that the Democrats do not need to focus on as of this moment. It's not a state that they need to win. However, if they want to have a landslide win, it's definitely one that could help them achieve that. Now we're going to look at the likely Republican states, and there are quite a few as well. Louisiana would be likely. No surprises there, really. Tennessee would be likely, a pretty solidly Republican state, along with other super solid Republican states. The state of Utah would be likely. Some recent polls have shown it being quite close. I don't think it will be close. Nebraska at large would be likely. Pretty interesting there. Nebraska at large not really contested, now being in the likely characterization. Alabama would be likely, a competitive Senate race there. Arkansas would be likely. Arkansas was previously believed to be pretty competitive in this election. However, we've only had one poll out of the state of Arkansas, and it doesn't really show too much of the sampling or anything like that. So I generally wouldn't trust it. But in addition to that, South Dakota and Kentucky. South Dakota is pretty interesting to me. South Dakota and North Dakota were pretty close back in 2008. Kentucky was not. However, I do think that this red wall, generally, from North Dakota to Texas, is starting to be torn down. And you'll kind of see this through the prediction. It basically talking about that. Now we're going to go into the characterizations. So these are states between 2 to 5% that are going to go for Joe Biden. There are only 2 of these states, and it is the state of Texas and the state of South Carolina. So Texas is it's the second largest state by electoral votes, and definitely could be a state in where if Joe Biden actually wins this, I think it's game over for President Trump. Even if he carries the Rust Belt, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to actually try and carry other states. I mean, Texas has a heavy Latino population, which generally, with a heavy Latino population, you would assume that it would be very Democratic. However, Texas, their Hispanics there generally seem to vote for more Republicans. They're more Republican than the rest of the country. And with Texas going, so would likely Florida, so would likely Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado and Nevada. So these states are generally ones that, if Texas goes, they're automatically going to go, and it's going to be game over for President Trump. And South Carolina, I definitely could see being the Indiana of 2020 if Joe Biden were to be, winning by landslide margins. I definitely could see South Carolina being a sleeper state and flipping on election day. So now we're going to go on to the lean Republican states. There are a few as well. Kansas, pretty interesting. A state that you would not generally think of being competitive, now being in a lean characterization, under 5 points. And that is in addition to Montana, Indiana, Mississippi, and Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. So Montana and Indiana were very close back in 2008. Montana very narrowly going for John McCain. Indiana going for Barack Obama by over a point, which is pretty interesting. However, Kansas, Mississippi, and Nebraska's first were all likely characterizations back in 2008. And I think that, with a landslide margin, definitely could bring these states back into contention. And now we're going to go on to the tilt Democratic characterizations. There's only one, and that is the state of Alaska. So Alaska was a likely margin back in 2016. Barack Obama, this is one of the only states where he improved his margin from going from 2008 to 2012, probably due to the fact that Sarah Palin was not on the ticket. I think that her being from the state of Alaska might have helped John McCain a little bit in winning the state. However, he did not necessarily need that help. And now the final state for tilt Republicans, you can probably guess what it is the state of Missouri. Pretty interesting that a state considered to be the predictor of every single election does not go to Joe Biden in a landslide prediction. However, this is a super close state and could easily, be within the margin of error if you want to say that for this prediction. But yeah, this is pretty significant. This is basically the Barack Obama 2012 map, including North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Texas, and Alaska. So, definitely improving on Barack Obama's 2008 margins and, definitely expanding the battleground. If this were to actually happen, I think that Republicans would basically be toast. And I think that this would be a major embarrassment for their party. However, this is not going to happen. And, states like Alaska going blue and Iowa and Ohio going to Joe Biden by over 5 points is pretty insane, and I don't see that ever happening, especially as of this moment. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and share and subscribe, whatever you can to support my channel, and thank you so much.